Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Copiosis live stream. You are here watching the show on exponential organizations. We're going to have a fabulous conversation today as we talk with our political strategist, Chris Hatton, today to talk about this new idea. Maybe it's not a new idea, called exponential organizations. My name is Perry Gruber. I am the founder of Copiosis, and with me today is Christopher Hatton. Chris, welcome to the show. Good to have you here
Thanks,
as
Perry.
always. Yeah, good to have you here as always. So before we jump into the topic of the day, I just want to remind people that you are watching the Copiosis live stream, and if you have not taken a look at what we're doing with our implementation plan, you can go to this website here, copiosis.com, and learn all about what we're doing. It is an innovation in which we are eliminating cost, price, debt, money, two-way transactions, and earning a living, which frees people to live their passions, and as a result of that, create the world that we think is utopia, but can actually be our practical reality. If you haven't already, we encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel by clicking the subscribe button and punching that bell so that you are alerted to any new live streams we schedule or videos that we put on our YouTube channel. We have about 500 video clips that we're producing and publishing throughout the months going forward. So you want to be in the know in terms of those updates. And then finally, if you want to know more about where the money goes that we use to sustain our operations, you can go to this website here on Patreon and see our budget. And also, if you're so moved, you can become a patron yourself for as little as $1 a month. So without further ado, Christopher, let's get started with our conversation. So first, why don't we start by talking a little bit about what an exponential organization is, and then maybe after that, we'll talk about why we're talking about that here at Copiosis. So take it away.
All right. So exponential organizations are not new. They're the concept is as old as some companies are, but the research and the actually writing down the process and studying what certain organizations have done are definitely I should say, are definitely about six years old. Sorry about that.
It's not a problem.
He loves the camera, so let me get him before he gets my shirt. All
Okay.
right. Sorry about that. And
It's,
so um, this largely parallels our 7Ds conversations that we've had before. It definitely starts with the digitization of good or service industry, anything, what have you. We've discussed these things, and I encourage viewers to go look back in our video profile for some of our conversations. Um, and then it goes into, okay, so when we digitize something, then we're providing a good and service that grows at a certain trajectory, and then it becomes disruptive. And disruptive innovation is kind of the key term that we've heard, the past few decades here.
yeah.
Uh, but now that we have computational power at a specific rate, we're starting to see those disruptions come in a lot quicker because it's not taking as long as the original digitization took to disrupt. It's happening now pretty quickly, sometimes within a month. So then you get into, okay, so if you're able to produce this good or service at zero marginal cost, then this is what we call a demonetization of that good or service. So some examples there are, Zoom. You have a free version of Zoom, so you can talk to anybody around the world with Zoom. Signal is an application where you can, call or text anybody across the world without any cost. So, and then, a really good example is Netflix and Blockbuster. So that's more of a disruption story where Netflix came in and they're like, oh, we're gonna send the DVDs to you, but then they were in the background planning, oh, we're going to stream everything. So when Blockbuster is like, oh, we're losing business to them sending DVDs in, then they started their own, oh, we're going to mail
Yeah,
DVD.
not
But
realizing that they're about to be pantsed.
yeah, little did
Because
they
Netflix,
know.
yeah, they didn't know that Netflix was planning to do away with CDs entirely eventually. But yeah, I get it. Yeah. So digitization is a big deal.
It is. So, and then it leads to democratization that's obviously limited based on access, which is part of what we're doing here in Copiosis is trying to provide access to everybody. Um, Exponential Organizations definitely is a play on capitalism. So profit margin and accumulating wealth and power definitely play into that role.
What,
However,
what do you mean by that? It's a play. Do you mean that they are playing it like they're like capitalism is a rube, or play like take advantage of?
no, like so not necessarily take advantage of, but um, it's being brought into the landscape through capitalism.
As
So
is
it's not,
everything. Yeah.
yeah, as is everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So a lot of the the current organizations that are evolving around this platform definitely are trying to bring this notion of abundance into capitalism. But I've argued that in the past that you can't really look at abundance through the lens of capitalism. So there's
Right.
always, if it's not zero cost, it's going to be a profit margin on top of that. So marginal cost is not zero marginal cost is not equal to zero cost, which
Gotcha.
is what we're offering. Yeah.
Gotcha. Maybe
Okay.
we should maybe take a quick break here and let the viewers know why you're the authority in terms of copiosis on this topic. So why don't you quickly give some background? Because I know TC's watching the show and he's going to think Perry should really ask about Chris's background so that people understand why he's talking about it. So why don't you give a quick background and then we'll get back to the conversation.
So my education is around the social sciences. I have a undergrad in economics, master of public policy, and a master of business administration. Um, I am a scholar in policy, power and influence, and business disruption, and I am recently certified as an EXO foundations, so I can participate in the EXO, which is Exponential Organizations community.
So you're
And
you're you're actually certified in what we're talking about, right?
yes,
Yes.
so in addition to other things, but my focus is narrowing in on decentralization
Yeah.
and futurism.
Yeah.
Um, I recently I'm on a leave of absence from the Michigan House of Representatives, so I've recently been entrenched in politics, and I have an entrepreneurial spirit, so
Yes, you
I,
do.
I completely believe in what Perry and Copiosis is trying to do, and wholeheartedly, I think my purpose in life is to help abate power's negative influence in the world. So I know that Copiosis is definitely attacking on multiple fronts in
Yeah.
that direction. So that's why I'm here.
Thank you. Thank you. So let's get back to what you're talking about. So you were saying that these organizations are striving to bring abundance or to realize, because it's already here, but realize abundance through capitalism. And capitalism you can't really talk about abundance in the context of capitalism because, well, but do these organizations that we're going to be talking about later in the hour, these exponential organizations, is their mission really about revealing abundance, or is it just that they're taking advantage of technologies like the 7Ds and this exponential organizational framework in order to realize greater profits?
So that's a great question because some people would think that that's a spectrum. But in some, if you look at it a different way, it could be a circle. So it could be a little bit of both. So meaning that I would argue that there's a little bit of both. So like TEDx, for example. Um,
Is that an exponential organization?
It is. And Chris Anderson came in and said, you know, the massive transformative purpose of TEDx is going to be ideas worth spreading. And then he, opened up all of the previous TEDx, talks to YouTube so anybody could look at them.
Gotcha.
And then he's like, anybody around the world can create a TEDx event. And, so then it exploded in value around, opening it up to community and crowd.
Well, so
So
when you say value, do you mean value to shareholders, or do you mean value to the public? I presume definitely the latter, but did that also increase the value of the company and therefore more profits to the owners of the company?
it did.
Okay.
So yes, so it did. So, but it did both because it provides
Yes.
a valuable service to, we can call that societal surplus. So, so you'll have to get pretty technical when you're drawing out the economics graphs on that, because it's not just, oh, if we supply this many TEDx events, then the value, the societal surplus will go up this way. No,
Right.
it's more like it's a cumulative, because it's asynchronous on the internet, so
Yeah.
you don't have to be there to actually gain the value of it.
Yeah.
So there's, but in general, it does come down to, uh, how quickly can you get to a unicorn status, which is $1 billion market cap. So,
Right.
and
Well,
that
how quickly you can what who has set that yardstick? Like how quickly can you get to $1 billion company? Is that the market saying that, or yeah?
that was, so the researchers that came up with, some of the, what would you call them, the
Milestones,
attributes of,
the
eh,
characteristics. Got it.
yeah, characteristics. And so the measuring stick in, the entrepreneurial, motivation is how quickly can we get to $1 billion. So,
Gotcha.
but then, and then that was probably, I'd argue that was 10 years ago. So in 2015, we started to see this proliferation of $1 billion coming within a year.
Yeah.
So then they started to say, all right, so let's talk about network effect. How quickly can we get to 100 million users? And then, as of in, I looked at data in 2018, and like Pokemon got it in less than a month. So
Got
it's like,
to 100 million users
yeah.
in less than a
So
month.
right, where it
Wow.
took, Facebook was second,
Yeah.
and it took a few months to get there, but it's I'm getting off into the weeds, so
Well, no,
let's
let
pull
me,
back.
yeah, let me get us back onto the road. We're not really in the weeds. I like where you're going with this, but I do want to ask, and this might be something the viewers are interested in hearing. So let's first define what an exponential organization is, and what are the characteristics that distinguish an exponential organization from whatever the other category
Sure.
is.
So
So what is an exponential organization?
an exponential organization is,
And just to let the viewer knows, you're looking at notes, I presume, is what you're doing there. Is that right?
uh, well, I mean, it's so if you're trying to, yeah. So I guess,
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
so it's definitely, so you can look at it through paradigms and through, mapping out how traditional businesses work, which
Yeah.
where most of our minds are definitely on, oh, the traditional businesses, traditional finance.
Yep.
And so when you have these disruptions coming in, it's like, all right, I'm a traditional organization. Let's see if we can try to incorporate that disruption into our core competency, which is in the middle. But then you have this immune system that is in uh, your DNA of your
Like
company
your
that
culture.
kicks,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that kicks in, kicks that disruption out, because they know that, oh, if we adopt this disruption, then it's kind of like a virus that's going to destroy that culture and DNA that we have as a company. So this is where the term creative destruction comes into place, because disruption does lead to destruction. And
Disruption does lead to destruction. Yes, of course it does. Yeah.
yes, so we have this, that's where the notion of the paradigm comes in. It's like, okay, we've been doing it this way, but if the new way is a different way, then we hit this maturity curve on the way you're doing things. So it's not as good. It's not, you're not going to lead, you're not going to get that trajectory of growth anymore. So it matures at the end, but then someone else comes in and, creates the next S curve that then would mature later on. But um,
While we're
this is
talking, while we're talking, I'm going to put that graph on the screen so that people can see what you're talking about, because the graphic does illustrate that. So here's that curve from our thumbnail picture, and you can see moving from left to right, the curve going exponentially up, but then it kind of plateaus off, and just before the plateau enters another entity, or maybe a function within the same organization that creates a new exponential curve. That's what you're
right.
talking about. Is that right, Christopher?
That's right. And it's usually there's three things. It's usually an idea, an actual process within to manufacture, or a product itself.
Gotcha.
So those are the three main things, but it's a long tail of disruption for sure.
Gotcha.
Um, so what computational power and digitization has enabled companies to do is to start disrupting multiple industries. So not just products, but industries through, um, you know, developing a mechanism from which a traditional organization can engage in disruption without destroying itself. So
Can you give an example of that?
yeah,
We'll
it's
give an example of an organization that destroyed itself, and I presume they did that successfully. So they're still around, but they look different, maybe. And then give an example of an organization that can do it now without destroying itself. Can you give an example of each?
so yeah, I think well, Netflix for one
I
is
thought you were going
is
to say
the the poster boy of being able to disrupt um, without destroying itself. So they came out saying, "All right, we're gonna mail the DVDs," and um, but then I said in the beginning that in the background they were
yeah.
um, incorporating this streaming process into the picture, because the infrastructure provides for it now, because of the speeds that
Yeah.
um, bandwidth. So it's all dependent on the underlying infrastructural technologies.
Gotcha.
So they they didn't do it from the core. They did it at the edge, because their core competency was warehousing and mail at that point. So when they actually developed this streaming process at the end, and they incorporated, okay, we're going to have a digital copy of each of these movies. So, but then it's like we don't have to have any of the physical copies of the movies. So that demonetizes their cost. But with Netflix specifically, then they started the content creation. So then
That
that
makes
explains,
Yeah,
yeah.
that makes sense. So when they moved to digital and then to content creation, and you may not know the answer to this, but did they get rid of their warehouses and all those CDs they had? And obviously they got rid of the supply chain that moved CDs from the warehouse to the house and back again. But did they get rid of the
Yes.
warehouses and everything?
No, so some of those buildings turned into studios for sure. So
Studios and probably server farms, perhaps? Or do they do Amazon Web Services with?
they do use AWS. Most companies do, and that's actually a really good point you bring up there, because I've heard that they're going to start to invest in their own. So,
Gotcha.
um, all
So
right. So
so
and
hang
then
on. So this is the company that survived the transition from traditional to EXO or exponential organization. Is there an example of one that did not, whose organization did not survive? Would that be Xerox perhaps, or is this another organization?
so Xerox is a good example. let's see. I was going to say, so what Skype did to some of the traditional telephone companies, but they were not necessarily exponential organizations because that was all. I mean, it's predicated on the infrastructure, so the telephone lines, but
Well, it's kind of that
uh,
because you can say that at the time of VoIP, when voice internet protocol, when it first started, you had the big bells, and they were predominantly landline based service providers. And when VoIP got going and Skype popped out as one of the first ones, if I recall correctly, there might have been Vonage, might have been one too, but Skype was the main one, I think. The organizations that did not keep up with that transition kind of went away. So is that a good example of a cultural destruction of disruption? Those are hard to say.
and then a more recent academic uh, theory that I mean, it's not a theory, it's a I got the information out of a paper when I was reading in school.
Yeah, yeah,
All the telephone companies now use VoIP,
yeah,
so they don't even use the traditional lines anymore. So
yeah,
it's there's reverse infrastructure
yeah.
type. Um, I know Blackberry fell victim to not. So it's a curious case
It
because
is.
they definitely were the first handhelds, first smartphones, and they were definitely growing exponentially. But then
Something
but then
happened.
the iPhone happened. So but that it's like first mover doesn't always win, but sometimes first mover just crushes it. So
Yeah.
it's a little bit of both depending on your core competency and where your mind is. But I think BlackBerry failed because they didn't have one of the attributes of an exponential organization, which is a massively transformative purpose. So, and that's different from your mission. Your purpose is different from your mission. So
So
that's
let's
something,
get back to that
you know.
because I do want to talk about these attributes because they're really important to understand as we transition to talking about copiosis. So let me just take a quick break. So if you're new to the shows, this is the Copiosis live stream. We're talking today about exponential organizations and why it's important from the Copiosis standpoint to be knowing about these because our intention is to transition into one of these ourselves. This is the Copiosis live stream. I'm Perry Gruber, founder Copiosis. With me here is Christopher Hatton, our political strategist. He's actually more than that, but that's the title he's got right now. We are talking about Copiosis. If you haven't heard about Copiosis before, you can find out more at this website, copiosis.com. It's a brilliant transition into a new world where cost, price, debt, money, two-way transactions, and earning a living are a thing of the past, leaving everyone free to pursue their passions and get rich. And so if you want to find out more about that, you can go to copiosis.com and find out more. If you know about Copiosis and you want to find out about where the money goes that we're using to implement this solution, you can go to this website. And then finally, if you haven't already, I encourage you to click on the subscribe button and click that bell so that you're in the loop on alerts that we have coming out from time to time, new live streams that we schedule, and new videos that we release. I think we release a new clip every week now, and we have about 500 of those that we are in the process of releasing. Okay, Christopher, so let's talk about these attributes. So one you said is what'd you call it? A massively what?
Massive transformative purpose.
And what
So
is
that's
what is
like,
that? Yeah.
so it's a combination of a few different things that you have to kind of ask yourself um, when you're talking about a mission. That's kind of like the business triangle. But when you're talking about a massively transformative purpose, it's literally your North Star. So you over time you have external and internal changes that'll shift where your trajectory is going, but then you have to realign it to your North Star every year. So um, there's a few questions you want to ask, especially if you're creating one for yourself, and then you can extrapolate that into your business. But what am I passionate about? What am I good at? What have I or will I get paid for? And then what does the world need me right now? So then you create this, you just list the things out that are underneath those four things. I encourage all of you listening to do that. And then kind of a Venn diagram where all of them meet. What is your purpose? So for me, I'm passionate about equality, decentralization, and happiness. What am I good at? Identifying disruption, talking with people, deducing things. What have I got paid for? Management, leadership, teaching, consulting, legislating. What does the world need from me right now? To expose corruption and policy making. So I
Yeah.
was pretty, I was pretty, just like, angry at my current situation then. So
Yes.
combining all those things together, um, I just said abate powers, negative influence in policy making. But now I'm transitioning career wise, so I'm
Gotcha.
definitely going to say abate powers, negative influence in the world, and
Gotcha.
that's one here. Yep.
Gotcha.
So
So from our from a Copiosis standpoint, I would say our massively transformative purpose has an alignment around our core fundamental philosophy, which we'll be talking about with our CTO, Jarek Spigner, and Michael Vick. I think it's next weekend. And then let's see, so it's the intersection of that and our desire to create a world free of those things I talked about during the break, which is price, cost, debt, money, two-way transactions, and earning a living. And then, of course, embracing technology, because our implementation plan depends heavily on that, especially the 7Ds type technology. And then, of course, happiness and spirituality also. So I think we're in line there. So what is the next? What is the next attribute of a exponential organization?
so there's two acronyms, and I'll go through these quickly. The first one is scale, and the second one is ideas. And scale stands for staff on demand. So you can hire gig workers on
Hang
like
on a
up.
second.
Yeah,
Scale stands for staff on demand. Oh no, the S of scale.
the S of scale stands
Okay,
for staff on
okay,
demand.
okay. Sorry about
C is community and crowd.
that.
A is algorithms, which I know you guys, Jarek and Mike, and you guys will talk a little bit about that next week.
Okay.
L is leveraged assets, which is super important because I know part of Copiosis is to leverage all physical and human capital assets,
Yeah,
which is going to be tremendously valuable to the world.
yeah.
And then E in scale is engagement. So that's obviously, prizes, feedback, uh,
Gamification, NBR, the kinds of things that we're incorporating into our innovation. Yeah, got it.
right, to create the incentives, right.
To create the
So
incentives, correct. Yeah,
so that is the external piece. So that's how you're engaging with everybody that's participating in Copiosis, but then we'll also have ideas, which is the internal control system. The I in ideas stands for interface processes. D is for dashboards, so we can look at real-time streaming data. E is for experimentation, which means okay, let's see if the incentives can get better over time. A is for autonomy, which is plays majorly into the stigmergy,
yeah,
and
totally.
S is for social technologies, which we're going to be able to use a lot of the social technologies to kind of you know uh, map out the hive mind, I guess
Gotcha.
is a way to.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So we've got scale and we've got ideas. So we're talking about the attributes of an exponential organization, and we're kind of using Copiosis where we are now to put some flesh around these attributes. And the first set of attributes was under this acronym called scale. That is the word scale. And the second set of attributes is and scale was externally focused. And then the second acronym, which characterizes the attributes of an exponential organization, is ideas, and that sounds like it's an internally focused set of attributes. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
And
And then what's
that'll
the,
help.
I'm sorry?
So then being able to keep a map. I'll just call it a map. So this is when I said you want to align to the North Star every year.
Yeah,
You're going to have these influences coming in from the scale and ideas that are going to go like this, but then you have to realign to your North Star.
gotcha.
So this is a way to keep. Technically, it really does some damage to the 5-year plan because you're doing this every year.
Yes, it does. Gotcha. So are those are scale and ideas the two groups of characteristics that define a exponential organization, or is there more than that?
That's it.
Oh,
So in the first iteration, was derived between 2010, 2013. Currently, EXO is creating version 2. So there's been some major updates, but ideas and scale stays the same. It just we give more modern. I mean, if you're calling 6 years ago not modern,
right.
um, more up to date examples, and then
So
and then I'm assuming that there will be more. I'm I'm assuming it'll stay the same, but just have more and more examples over time.
gotcha. So I can think of a ton of questions to ask to move this conversation forward. But first, let's give some examples. And hopefully it's okay if you don't, but hopefully you have that list of 100 exponential organizations handy. Let's give some examples of some of the familiar exponential organizations so people can understand what it is, what kind of organization we're talking about. So you mentioned Airbnb, you mentioned Netflix. There was one that was surprising that's at the top of the list. Do you remember which it is?
I do not.
Hmm. But like Airbnb is another one, is that correct? Airbnb is an exponential organization, is that right?
It is. So Airbnb and Uber and other entities that are platform entities themselves leverage assets, so houses and cars on one end, and then leverage the providers, so the suppliers, so the homeowners and the car owners. And then they provide a service to their platform, which is I need a place to stay, I need a ride.
Gotcha.
Um,
And then would you say, so another one I remember being on there was Fiverr. So Fiverr is the organization that provides creative services, but the platform provides creative services, but the users, both on the buying side and the selling side, generate the content that is monetizable. So you have creators who are using the website to get to buyers, creators like I think it's illustrators, painters, voiceovers, actors, a whole bunch of people who are creative and create things in the creative space. And then on the other hand, you have people who want to buy those services. And so Fiverr puts these groups together. They provide the platform, and then they, like you're saying, they leverage the value of the creator and the need of the consumer, matched where they match them on the platform and therefore generate revenue from that. Is that correct?
that's correct, and this is a traditional classic middleman. These are all middleman examples, which is it can lead to democratization, but when we get into so these are all platform initiatives, and these are some keywords that I say a lot.
Yeah.
Um, but when we get to the full decentralization aspect of it, we're starting to see these mimicked versions of these type of platforms, which are cooperatives, which say that the suppliers and the buyers, become owners of. So participation alone leads to ownership.
Can you give an
Um,
example of one of those? Because that sounds like the next evolution in this.
yeah. So though, there's there's a database that keeps track. There's multiple databases, but one of my favorite ones is Internet of Ownership .coop. So that's IOO.coop.
Mhm.
And there's multiple initiatives there where just these local groups put together these decentralized um, digital cooperative platform initiatives. So that's a step beyond the platform initiative piece that decentralized, or I mean exponential organizations
Hmm.
definitely, uh, evolved into, that it's just information only, where they don't have to own any assets, and
Hmm.
you can have a company that's 100 employees provide, managing, hundreds of thousands of different, leveraged assets across the world.
What's an
Um,
example of that structure? Do you know of an organization that's doing that now?
yeah, Airbnb
Oh,
is a
gotcha. Okay,
yeah,
okay.
and so but then if you look at some of the impacts that Airbnb has led to, the causal factor is, okay, yeah, real estate's price keeps on skyrocketing. So one of our initiatives at Copiosis is to be able to provide housing at zero cost.
Hmm.
Excuse me. Um, all right, so it's like, okay, since traditional real estate's going up, so then all of these ancillary services that are on the adjacent to real estate, like senior housing and timeshare and all the rest of that, those prices start to creep up at the pace of real estate. And it's like, oh, wait a second. Since wages haven't been keeping up and Social Security hasn't been keeping up to that pace,
Yeah,
now we're starting to see a lot of seniors that can't afford to go into senior housing. So then we're putting a lot more dependence on families and
yeah.
such. So, um, hey, Yoda, you're a good boy. Thank
He is a
you.
good boy. Nice little entertainment interlude there.
So, and I'll just be real quick with this. So now we're starting to see, oh, wait a second. Since Airbnb is now disrupting hotels, hotels are like, okay, how can we get back into the mix? And it's like, all right, maybe we can make a play on disrupting senior housing. So it's like, okay, so now we start to see hotels offering seniors discounts to live in their hotels.
Are
And
we
then
seeing that?
we are seeing that. There's data on it right now. And then, defunct malls are being converted into cooperative senior housing, where it's just portable and it's public-private partnership. So we're
Huh.
starting to see these morphs going on that are a result of greedy crony capitalism by artificial scarcity. So that's one of the reasons why I like Bitcoin so much, because it's engineered scarcity, not
Yeah,
artificial.
yeah, yeah.
It's coded in. Um, so taking this all back to Copiosis, when we start to look at some of the causal patterns of where we are in society, and I know uh, you've mapped them out very well in the website and
Yeah.
some of the talks that I've heard you give. Um, we start to see this uh, this just piled accumulative resentment towards the system as it exists now.
Yeah.
And then when you add taxes and government and controls on top of that, it's like, oh man. So now I have to pay the nursing home so that I can die. It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
this crazy situation where the incentives don't match, and the sustainability of the system that we operate within now is put into question.
And the
Um,
satisfaction that the system is supposed to provide doesn't really match the expectation, which is why we're seeing the frustration. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so it leads to the creation of negative emotion at an exponential scale, and we need something to offset that.
Yeah. I get it. So it's interesting because from a oh it's just at the time for the break. So let's take a break real quick and then we'll come back because this is a great time to transition into copiosis and why we are intuitively heading in the direction of becoming an exponential organization. So everyone who's watching, if you're watching live or you're watching the recorded version, this is the Copiosis live stream where we're talking about exponential organizations today. We're talking about these new technologies and companies that are bringing in the future and as a result of that becoming very wealthy because they're leveraging zero marginal cost technologies and processes to do that. I'm Perry Gruber, the founder of Copiosis. With me is Christopher Hatton, our political strategist, and we are talking about exponential organizations on this live stream. But on all live streams, we talk about issues and topics that are pertinent to our implementation plan here at Copiosis. If you're unfamiliar with Copiosis, you can go to copiosis.com and find out more about what we're doing. And if you are familiar with Copiosis and you've been to the website and you're really excited about what we're doing and you're wanting to stay up on the leading edge of the things we're doing, you want to subscribe to this YouTube channel. Click the subscribe button and hit that bell so that you have alerts of relating to new live streams that we schedule and our new releases of our video clips. In fact, next week, I believe it is, we're going to be talking about the underlying philosophical underpinnings of copiosis and why that is so important and why that makes copiosis so unique and why so many people are frustrated with the pace of copiosis. A lot of people think that we need to move faster. We copiosis need to move faster because the world's going to hell and everything's going to end, the system's going to collapse and people are going to die, and Bill Gates is trying to dominate the planet and reduce the population and all these kinds of things that make people feel like there's a sense of urgency, but we don't feel that. And if you want to know why we don't feel that, you'll want to tune in. I believe it is next week, the next live stream where myself and our CTO, Jarek Sprigener, and Michael Vick will be talking about the spiritual underpinnings of copiosis and what makes our innovation, our transition plan, and our approach to the transition plan so unique. But today, we are talking with Christopher Hatton on this new idea, or not new idea, this idea called exponential organizations and why they're so important in bringing in the future. And it's interesting, Christopher, because this conversation dovetails so nicely with the 7Ds conversation we had before. And before that, we talked about something else relative to the future that you're.
Influence, yeah.
What was it?
The power pillars.
That's right, the 5 power pillars. Yeah, they're all kind of like loop connecting beautifully here. So, okay, so the I did not know about the nature of exponential organizations. I mean, I was aware of Airbnb and eBay might be one, and Uber and Netflix. I was aware of these extremely successful companies and aware that they were basically leveraging other people's assets in a way that they compensate other people for those assets, but then leverage the assets so that they themselves can profit off of them. And there seems to be this process, as you're describing, in my awareness, this process of transition from this centralized way of doing things to this decentralized, demonetized, digitized way of doing things. And it seems like that is exactly where we're headed with copiosis. And so why do you think we at Copiosis should be aware of this exponential organization phenomena? And how do you see it benefiting what we're doing at Copiosis?
So that's a great question, Perry. I think it's important to pay attention to and be aware of it through the lens of copiosis, because there's definitely a quick kind of hyper modern evolution going on, right underneath the rug. So most of us are not paying attention to how fast things are moving towards a decentralized economy in general, and it was brought on originally by the internet, and we can argue that power and influence trying to control spaces in the internet
Yeah.
to direct manipulation tactics and
Yeah.
such. We've talked about all these things in the past, but what we want to encourage everybody watching, and please everybody watching, encourage other people to focus on the good things, focus on
Yes.
the good, because it is up to us to say, yes, I hear you, and that's definitely there, but there's also this. So the decentralized economy aspect is trying to bring into this world a just the best word to say is access. So access for people to participate in anything that a developed nation or rich people can participate in. So it is about the little guy. It is about the bottom of the pyramid. It is about demonetizing. So not just to zero marginal cost, but to value based on ownership. So it's you participate, and then not only you gain value or benefit from participating, but everybody else within that organization benefits. So that's the plus sum game.
Yeah, it's what the Seeds organization calls better than free. And I love what you said, the ownership, the value of ownership, because when you think about what Copiosis is doing with our implementation, we are creating a framework, an economic framework where people are rewarded for every result they produce, not just results in the work world or what capitalism considers to be valuable, but everything someone does. And if you consider from the standpoint of asset ownership, the results of your human action are valuable. And what we're doing with Copiosis is we are rewarding or awarding people for all of the value they create and thereby own. And so there's a huge amount of, hi Yoda, there's a huge amount of value that individuals create and thereby own that is going unrewarded. And in Copiosis, all of that value is captured and rewarded, which is how we are able to claim that everyone in a Copiosis society becomes rich, because there's nobody who is not creating some amount of value. And of course, because of our algorithm and the nature of MBR, once you start getting a reward for some sort of result you've produced, you keep getting that reward so long as the results show up. So, yeah, we are really taking this idea of asset ownership, the value of asset ownership to the nth degree, recognizing both abundance of opportunity and the abundance of value that's created by human beings. It's a
That,
perfect connection. Go ahead. Sorry about that.
that's an excellent way to describe it, because it really takes the what because right now capitalism and abundance are intertwined with this zero marginal cost notion. And then we see abundance at a mutually exclusive independent level, saying I am true abundance, and that not only comes from the ability to provide for our unit here, and then I'll separate it again from technological advance.
Yeah.
It is going to be mindset, and it is going to be technology in the future too. So it's a combination of both. Where right now we say, oh, there's not enough for everybody because of the way we do things, and it's traditionally comes down to supply and demand economics and distribution
Yeah.
networks.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And so
but in
it's
the future,
go
yeah,
ahead.
go ahead.
And no, go ahead. In the
Yeah, in the future, it's not going to be limited by that, because we're gonna be able to plug in gaps and fill in leaks in the system with technology and with mindset. So it's
Yeah.
it's a
Well,
combination.
well, see, that's the thing. One of the great things about Copiosis is that we're approaching the future from that two-pronged perspective, which is a technology and a platform and an economic framework, but also a mindset. And the fundamental philosophy of Copiosis, which we'll be talking about next week, is is predominantly focusing on the shifting of the mindset. And if you don't shift, and a lot of people come to Copiosis and have said this, that you can innovate a framework all day long, but if you don't change the mindset, then you've got a problem. And what we're saying at Copiosis is we're doing both, and we've been doing both from the very beginning. It's mindset and a framework. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Very, 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 very cool. So so we have some initiatives. It's very interesting. Our transition plan includes some very deliberate, specific steps. And one of those steps includes standing still, basically. It's allowing the world to catch up, and for people who are predisposed to working with Copiosis to find us. And we're in the process now of attracting those types of people. In fact, we have a strategic partnership that we're putting together with a very large population, a global population that seems like it's going to be a really great fit. But we have some other strategic partnerships too with the Seeds organization. Many of you may know about Seeds, the cryptocurrency based economic platform that offers better than free transactional opportunities for members of their community. We've aligned with them because of the win-win nature of that relationship. There are partnerships like that we are forming here at Copiosis that in the future will produce tremendous benefit, not just for Copiosis and our implementation plan, but for the world overall. Our budding relationship with the Holochain organization is one of these. And so there are so many things that we're doing in Copiosis where at this point it looks like we're not doing anything. But in actuality, there's a lot of activity underway. that in the future, the kind of seemingly nothing that we're doing today will show up as tremendously valuable because we did what we did today, which looks like doing nothing. So it's just really fun to be watching what we're not doing in Copiosis, realizing that what we're not doing is actually going to produce tremendous value in the future. And it is a lot like this exponential organization idea in the sense that we are taking advantage of relationships and platforms that further inspire or implement the 7Ds, thereby disrupting and destroying the five power pillars, and thereby creating Copiosis as an exponential organization. And there's nothing that we're doing overtly to transition into an exponential organization. It just seems to be happening as we move forward into the future. So it's pretty cool. So we've got about 10 minutes left, Christopher. Is there anything else we want to talk about in those 10 minutes? Any ideas
Yeah,
that
I
you
think
think we've missed?
right. No, I think you kind of just gave a pretty good synopsis of the meta analysis here, and incorporating some of the things that I've brought to the table, in that aspect. And I think it's pretty spot on because, um, so what I mentioned the decentralized economy a little bit ago, and largely it's been brought on after the advent of the blockchain.
Yeah.
And blockchain right now is being, um, it's synonymous to cryptocurrency. There are a lot of blockchain applications being built into,
Yes.
um, supply chains, and pretty much everything where you use money, or there's a stream of paperwork,
Right.
is there's development being, um, incorporated with blockchain technology. But when we get into the notion of cryptocurrency, we think about it as, it's a financial vehicle where you can
Speculative
invest.
investment. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
So largely that's true because you can do that. But then the creators of, initiatives that will or do provide value to the world, because there are a lot that didn't, and we saw that, ICO boom a few years back
Yeah.
where people snatch and grab.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that that doesn't happen, but when something new comes out, usually we see the scammers use it first.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so there are going to be some that do provide, exponential benefit to the world. A lot of them are decentralized, so meaning there's no throat to choke. There's no, um, nobody owns it. It's a protocol.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's the mathematics are the governing dynamic.
So it really is the underlying, and this is what I tell some of my friends who get excited about what I'm doing with cryptocurrency. It's the underlying technology that creates the value of the token, but it's really the underlying technology that is the value. So like with and I may get this out of I may describe this incorrectly, so correct me if I'm wrong here, but like with Cardano, the underlying value of that technology is providing financial services to developing economies. The underlying value of Holochain is to provide a super decentralized post blockchain technology that is the future beyond blockchain. And so these underlying technologies and the people who are implementing them is the real value of crypto. It's not really crypto, but I guess it's just leading edge technologies that have a crypto component. And most people get kind of enamored with the cryptocurrency component, not really understanding that the real value is the technology that the people who did the ICO are generating the income from the ICO to fuel.
That's right. That's right. And I mean, there's some of the creators would go deeper into what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
Uh, Cardano is definitely trying to, be a platform from which smart contracts and decentralized finance and, de-identities and
Yeah.
all this kind of stuff can be built on, just like Ethereum, but better.
Yeah.
So we'll see where that leads. But, um, so there's this argument going on right now, If it can be decentralized, you should do it. And
Yeah.
then also at the same time, if it can be tokenized, you should do it.
Oh,
So a lot of these centralized power pillars are pretty strong. And even if you create a decentralized platform, it doesn't mean you're going to get a network effect on it. So that's why you bring in this notion of if it can be tokenized, you should do it. Because I guarantee we're about to see Twitter being tokenized to where fake news wouldn't have a token with it. So if
uh,
you if you see the fake news and I mean, you see the news story and there's no token, then it's like you can just swipe it away.
is
So
this
there's
is
going to
this
be
where the nature of the non-fungible tokens would play a role? The NFTs
it
that
is
are okay. So Twitter. Oh, this is interesting. So you can basically certify content using a tokenization process.
yes. So, but that again, it doesn't get rid of the opinion of the centralized media player,
Gotcha.
but it does get rid of fake news, which can drive limbic resonance.
Gotcha.
So,
Gotcha.
all right.
Limbic resonance. I love that. So cool. So well, there's a whole lot more we could be talking about with all of this stuff, and it's fun. It's so cool to think about how all the times we've had you on the show talking about the five power pillars, the 7Ds, and now exponential organizations are all playing together to create this really exciting future. And like you said about 10 minutes ago, we here at Copiosis really encourage people to focus on the positive things that are happening, because if you turn your head to those things, you get really excited, like Christopher and I and the rest of us on the core team are, about the future, because there's so much going on that is positive and that is complementary to what Copiosis is doing, and thereby creating a world that is really, really something to look forward to. So, go ahead,
And
Christopher.
I'll add a little bit of a spiritual cap onto
Thank
this
you.
because it's going to be able to, and I know I've said this in the past, but relieve those societal pressures which we feel pressing on us even more now because of some of these technologies. But they're being used in a specific way to do that specifically, so that um, you know you can be manipulated, and that's I've argued that in the past too. But when we start to see copiosis being used and applied, it's going to lift societal pressure. It's going to enable us to listen to our inner being, so through our emotion, we're not going to be constantly creating negative emotion by operating within the system that's designed currently. It's going to be a copiosis system that's not going to cause any of that negative emotion, and it's going to create this situation where um, you're going to build on positive emotion and be able to through the power of your own thoughts amplify that positive emotion to where you're feeling good all of the time, um, and then be able to tap into your own intuition and become a creator. So that
That's
is an important piece.
beautifully said. That's so beautifully said, because that's exactly the roadmap for every individual, is to exactly what you just said, and it's worth repeating because it was so beautifully said. And I'm hoping that TC is watching today and caught that, because we need to turn that into a clip. That is the individual roadmap benefit of copiosis. Exactly what you said. So,
Totally.
Christopher, yeah, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate you and Yoda's time. Nice little interludes that he was bringing into the show. Everybody
Yep.
else who are watching the show today, thank you so much for being with us live. For those of you who are watching recorded, thank you for watching the show in the recorded version. If anyone has any comments they want to make, go ahead and do so. We respond to everyone, even when the show is over. You've been watching the Copiosis live stream. We've been talking about exponential organizations and how they are impacting and creating the future, and how Copiosis is endeavoring to become itself a copiosis, or sorry, an exponential organization. If you have any other questions, if you have any questions about Copiosis, you can go to our website at copiosis.com and use the contact form and get an answer within a couple of days. to any question that you ask. In the meantime, feel free to reach out to us through our other means on social media, including joining our social group. If you go to Facebook, you can search for Copiosis Social Group and find us there. And in the meantime, we will see you, I think it's next week that we're talking about the underlying fundamental philosophy. So join us next week, same time, 9 a.m. Pacific time, noon Eastern, and we'll see you then. Thank you, Chris, so much for being on the show today. Bye, everybody. See you next time.